maybe if we start with writing down the theme, travelling with strangers, everyday interactions. Thank you. And just really start brainstorming, what thoughts does that provoke in you, that theme, first of all? What thoughts come to mind?
Anyway, like kind of alienation and
no interaction.
Lack of interaction,
Right.
or kind of like aggression, even.
Okay.
Like a kind of lack of listening, maybe, and
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awkwardness. Particularly if you're travelling at rush hour and you're in physical contact with lots of people, you don't know them, and you're press them against each other for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you don't know who they are, and you're aggressively not making eye contact with them. But I mean, there's contact there that we all sort of don't acknowledge, and then sometimes it's weird if you do acknowledge it, if you make eye contact with the person who's there and you're like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, the whole eye contact thing is really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a sort of code that, well, there's no code, but there isn't a lot of eye contact.
Yeah.
You just have fleeting eye contact. You shouldn't even look at people too much.
Yeah. It's certainly something I think you learn if you didn't grow up here. You kind of.
And there's a whole thing
you're
about
visiting.
rules. There's a whole thing about rules, then, isn't there? What are the rules for eye contact? What are the rules for these things? And different people come with different rules from different places, and they don't know what's being used in this place where we are, in this context.
I think there's something around, like you said, it's quite when you feel that there's a disruption, or someone comes in and says like hi, to you, and or to one when you're travelling, and you think, well, what if they're like, because there's a chance they might talk to you for ages, there's a chance whatever, and it's that lack of safety. So then it's kind of silence and detachment, or creating your own bubble or your own barriers kind of become a bit of a ritual. There's something there about how disruption would be a disruption of the everyday, or like repurposing a space would repurpose our interactions, because everyday interactions are often, we're quite silent, we're quite stilted, we avoid eye contact, it's kind of a dance of avoidance in London, because there's just too many people to engage with, so it's a bit like, that's why we do it. It's not because we're, like a lot of people say that London's not very nice, but we are, it's just that there's too many people to say hi to, so it's like...
What I took from your presentation was that things need to be warm and fun and comfortable, but the idea of collision is none of those things, and so I disagree with you on that point, but maybe we can find a place to agree. So sometimes I think you need to do a project that is powering you, and that is socially powering you, and that's personally powering you, and the audience doesn't have to feel comfortable and fun. I mean, maybe the result is that there's an adrenaline rush and the players are invigorated by the result, but I don't think the purpose needs to always be
No, I think
pleasant.
you're completely right, and maybe I'm misexplained it. I did mean in the whole, from the curating to the production to the moment where it's presented. I think for me it's the behind the scenes.
Right.
Well, I completely agree.
I mean, I wrote all this, I was like, it should be fun. Oh my god, I've been missing the crucial element.
So in our group was Brian, Alison, Ruth, Anna, Helena, Sunil, Mike, Lou, Gail, and myself, Hannah. And we're discussing the travelling with strangers everyday interactions. So first of all, we just sort of started with a general discussion about what that meant to us, that particular provocation. This idea of risk versus familiarity. So the stranger could be a risk, but it could also feel quite familiar, being in that, if you're from London, or probably a lot of us are, sometimes that travelling with a group of strangers could feel familiar because it's something that we do quite a lot. Lou was talking about the Mira Kellick's project about repurposing the museum and the space. Actually, no, I'm quite sure what that meant.
Well, so I think I was interested in how travelling can become, like it's a doing word, I can't remember the difference between verb and noun, I went to a really bad school, but it becomes a doing word, it becomes an act, it doesn't become a space.
A means for getting to one place, the travelling space.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, I have no grammar.
And then, I think it was Sunil who put this question out, which I thought was really interesting, is what makes the stranger strange? So what are the barriers that create a stranger between you and someone else, or the strange feeling? Someone mentioned the kind of staggering volume of the people that you travel past daily when you live in a big city like London. I think it was you, wasn't it, Alison? And you'd just been to the Isle of Skye, and you were remarking on the fact that there, you might meet 10 people in one day, whereas here you might meet 10 people on your street just walking to the end to the bus stop. Then the anonymity of travelling with strangers could be calming but also isolating. And then someone else talked about the travelling part as the journey of a performer, and the sort of ritual of journeying as a performer to do performances in different spaces around the world or around the country or just in a city, and how that becomes the ritual and can offer a sort of place of transcendence in some way. And then I talked about the freedom of travelling alone, the sort of time it gives you when you're on a train for 2 hours and you haven't got anything to do except be on that train for 2 hours, and quite often that you can find yourself writing or being quite productive in that time if you're on your own. But also then the loneliness, the side of the loneliness of travelling alone, and especially when you're with a lot of people that you don't know, that can feel like a very lonely place. Headphones and hood. Who said that? Someone, Gail. I thought that was a really, like a really nice little thing about this sort of travelling in a bubble. You've got your hood on and your hood down and your headphones on. And it's sort of a means of self-protection and of controlling the environment around you by inputting, giving your inputs and kind of hiding yourself. Then we want to talk about everyday interactions. What are these? The music making that we all do every day, humming, singing, the shower, and the sort of value of those everyday moments. And then the ritual and the routine and the repetition of everyday interactions, and how that can kind of elevate an everyday thing into something quite deep and meaningful when it's repeated across days.
To ask you just to whiz through these.
Oh, sorry,
it's all right.
Silence and detachment as a ritual, same thing. Everyday interactions, the dance of avoidance. That was good, I like that. And then moments of disruption. Gail's amazing story about when she was pregnant and a stranger came to offer to do up her shoelace, and she said no because she felt bad, but then the stranger went off and then she realised she couldn't do up her shoelace. She really said yes. Music as a connective, a comfortable meeting point, so how do you bring music into these everyday actions? Audience reactions, how to disrupt the daily. Then we talked about singing with strangers on the tube, the sort of joy of that. Representing voices authentically, how do you do that? We talked about honesty, not filtering, being genuine, representing those voices genuinely, or if you are going to filter, it's important to be explicit about how you're going to do that. We talked about Matthew Herbert's piece in the This Is a Voice exhibition, handing responsibility over to the audience for the work, giving them the responsibility for creating the work. Context for audiences to speak, so safe environments, offering a safe environment, and again building rituals that allow safe exploration. Considering the audience experience, how do we do this? The commuter audience, we actually focused on commuter audience for this travelling with strangers. I mean, there are a million other ways to interpret that, but for some reason, anyway, it's a very different audience because they have another objective. They're going from A to B, they're not there to see your performance. So how do you kind of get in on that journey? Depends on the context, the connection, and the way that it grows is key. The moment of wonder and the slow release of the moment of wonder, that's a lovely thing someone said. Then we ended on these questions of who are your community, who are you working with? Is it a community of public, or perhaps it's someone that you're co-working with, co-cooperating with? And what does it mean in the context of it?
Thank you.
Thinking about travelling strangers. We also kind of started thinking about commuting and the kind of ideas of alienation and aggression, awkwardness, the lack of interaction that kind of defines a lot of people's commuterness, and kind of eye contact as kind of like a point, like a pivotal point of that, where there's an aggressive eye contact and staring, what the difference is, and then how children can kind of break the rules. So we're talking about like what the rules are, and then how different people, actually most people in London are from London, so people have different rules, and like learning the rules and things that kind of disrupt those rules, like children, and how it can make people more friendly, but also make people more angry. They're talking about like headphones, leaky headphones, not leaky headphones with being in their own private aural environment, and then there's cover protection, and particularly I was talking about like a conversation I recently about with a lot of women I know who would use headphones as like a protection against unwanted interactions in public spaces.
Headphones that aren't on.
Headphones with no sound coming in, just as kind of like a protection thing. Yes, and there's wasp blasting. Oh yeah, and we're talking about everyday sexism. And how that relates to the idea of how like also like being the interventional voice that kind of when one voice says something then many others, so that's a campaign which people talk about kind of treat like the experience of sexism on an everyday basis and like little things, and it gives a voice to things that like if one person hadn't done it then like it's a multitude of experience kind of thing. How music can be intrusive and unwelcome, and actually people and the kind of noise levels on public transport, how high they are, and how people actually want less noise, less sound most of the time. And then strange status, and can be about whether you have things in common, like how you're defined as a stranger. How some people in a situation will be more strange than others, and how at what point do you stop becoming a stranger? Like at what point of interaction does that stop? Talking about some installations that respond to movement or interaction, possibly unintentional. So like the difference between kind of an invitation and an intervention in terms of consent issues. So one about like different things. Cycling on a particular German car park where like when you cycle on it, it makes kind of sound. So it's kind of, that's I guess maybe more of an intentional interaction that is by nature kind of consensual in one way, or and different aspects about consent.
One final point,
yes. Safe spaces. So the creation of a safe space, sound can be threatening, and how you can create a safe space for some, but not. So how to safe space for some and being not safe for others, and that's very important for us to think about.
Thank you. Brilliant.
So our topic was collision. We started off by talking about what a collision signified in the more sense of the word. We spoke about it being accidental, about being something that's dangerous and unplanned, unexpected, something violent, compared to the idea of it being a deliberate grafting of ideas, which is what I think we traditionally think of in the sense of combining art forms. We're looking for more of a blend or a weaving together rather than this. But the word is collision, and so maybe we should respect and revere this word in the context of this proposal. We spoke about change, the idea of it bringing a collision, bringing a change was undisputed, and that so the result is something new, and so the context of this newness, and whether it was a personal newness, a newness to the audience, to the players, and that the idea of being new was something subjective. that was my idea. Some of this is what I was contributing because that's what I remember. Okay, sound and visual and performance. I'm not sure where that came in.
Talk
I
about the different parameters that you could have colliding, or so you have sound, you have different aspects of it, sound, visual, performance, you could have those different parts colliding or working together.
Right, I think at that point we spoke about the idea of generic collision and art form collision and the various levels of collision, sort of. I forget what the upper and the lower extremes were, but the idea that collision is a sort of an onion.
Just quickly through these last few.
Yes, sure. So the idea of political collision, philosophical collision, that it doesn't need to be so great as art form collision. The idea that collision implies more of the abrasiveness of improvisation, which is different every time rather than being a more structured delivery. Audience. Challenging, uncomfortable, oh yes, so we spoke about how the idea of collision might resonate with an audience, that in the literal sense of the word it doesn't follow that it needs to be comfortable and pleasant and enjoyable. And then we spoke for vast swathes of time about how this would be formed in the case of a proposal and marketed, and the ways that then carries out in terms of the actual project, and whether that needs to be part of the original stake in the ground that we're here for. So I think hopefully I've covered everything that is there anything that I've missed out from my group?
Fantastic. Thank you very
Thank
much.
We talked a lot about the semantics of the word collision as well, and Yumi made this great point at the beginning where it feels like it's not about fusion, it's about collision. And we got this big conversation about the violence of collision, and that had to be some negative force perhaps, and then we talked about the fact that for some of us that felt like celebration or the dismantling of something classical that already exists, how you can dismantle something and infuse it with new ideas and thoughts and experiences. Anything to add?
Yes, so I think we did look more at the literal sense of the word rather than anything else. So something that one of our members said was that it's something where both parties are changed by the collision. So the result is that both art forms, whatever they may be, whether it's a visual or musical or physical, it will be changed as a result. So that's really important, looking at kind of why that changes and how we do it and how our audience and participants will react and respond to those changes. Something else is the breaking of the norms of the art forms that we're dealing with, and how collision has a resonance of celebration about the word. As we were saying, we did think it did have a little bit of a negative connotation from one angle, but also it can be celebratory, and it's how we address that and what we do.
And we also talked about the Hadron Collider, which was a really amazing thing, and the idea that really it's about forces, and sometimes invisible forces, coming together, and the celebration or the excitement and anticipation about seeing what is created as a result of that. And the only other thing I think was really, for me, that was really exciting that we talked about, and as we were talking about audience and who this piece is for and why, and the idea that there's the opportunity that you can bring this to a traditional classical music audience and challenge them and subvert their expectations by bringing new ideas, thoughts, voices into that. But also that I suddenly was thinking about how there's this opportunity to bring classical music to people who are strangers to it, and the idea that they might be able to recognise something in what you're making was something I was really inspired by and excited by.
Discovering something new through that.
Yeah, I think
that's kind of all we had.
Brilliant. We had lots, but
Thank you very much. That's big. Of course, we were really squeezing time with those discussions, and because of course you're all such creative people, I'm afraid we're a bit ambitious in that time. So I think rather than further discussion now, because you've all had lots of really interesting discussions, and I'm also aware that we've said we'll be finishing the session in a few minutes' time at about 8:30. If it's all right with you, I think we'll perhaps head on to the final bit of the workshop, which is just a little bit on what Spitalfields Music is looking for in open call applications, a little bit about the process, and then there'll be a little opportunity for you to ask questions, sort of Q&A, and it may be best to do that individually, catching team members, because I know some of you will probably have to disappear at pretty close to 8:30. So as you've picked up, open call applications, which I think you know are due in 8 days' time, at the end of the day on the, I don't know if, have you all seen the information sheet about the open call, which went to the 16th of August. And as we've been talking, they're around these two, they're asking you to respond to either of these two provocation points. And the reason for that is that they relate in some way to work that focuses in on Spitalfields music work. So for example, with Collisions, Classical Music Meets, Andre de Ridder, who's artistic curator for the festival in December this year, is interested in working with all kinds of music. So there's classical music alongside other musics and contemporary musics. And music for travelling is something that's been thought about a lot within the Spitalfields music team, and there's travelling going on all the time through this area of East London. So, but then it's very open to interpretation. So it's not that you've got that applications that you must think, oh, what is Spitalfields music looking for here? Lots of ways of responding to that, and we're interested in really that provoking thought in you and your interpretation of how you might respond to that. And I think the process then is that there'll be, you submit an application form which can be downloaded from Spitalfields Music website, that's right, Rachel. And then there'll be shortlisting and selection for an interview process will take place with members of Spitalfields music team and also external practitioners who are expert and work in these areas. Then decision will be made, and interviews will happen in the week of the 11th of September.
It's just something to note, there's quite a big gap between submitting application and the interview, so don't be alarmed.
So it's about a month's gap. And then the project itself successful. So we're looking for, there'll be two selected, and there won't necessarily be one for each of the provocations. It might be, it'll be the two ones that we think are the most interesting, and it may be that two are responding to the same provocation. And in that, in your application, we understand, of course, that before actually being appointed for this project, you won't necessarily be able to have a complete, well thought out idea of exactly what your project or development project might be. But we do want to get a sense of who you are, and also that you've begun to sort of think about what area of what idea that you might develop in response to this. And the process then will be working for successful applicants, working with Spitalfields team will provide production support and help you develop ideas towards showcasing work in progress at some point in early February. That will become clearer later. Rachel, anything else you'd like to add to that? I'm very conscious we're pretty much up against our time.
I think just to say, we want to see artists that they're challenging their practice. I think we're interested in seeing how it's developing you, as well as developing an idea. We're really interested in pushing that in you. I think with everything else, just have fun.
Rachel's really hit the nail on the head there. That's the key thing, the key opportunity here is something that takes your practice further. You can test something, test an idea, and develop it. That's really important. If you've got any further questions, do ask Rachel or B or other members of the Spitalfields music team. I'll probably be less good at answering the questions. I'm not really even properly here yet, but so call a member of the team here. Or if there's something when you leave tonight that you realise before submitting an application you're still not sure about, Rachel is on call at Spitalfields music office. You can give her a call or contact her, send her an email over the next week. Other than that, I think thank you very much for coming. And
have we got any questions?
Yeah, any questions while we're standing here?
It was just a kind of logistic one, because I thought I saw on the page that it said there was a specific date in February, a performance date.
We've given it out already, so I don't know if it's 8th and 9th, yeah, that's...
So it has, so the work in progress will be on that weekend?
If you are unable to, we are flexible, that's the date we have penciled.
Okay.
It makes sense for our calendar, but we're flexible in February, so if that date really doesn't work for you and we take your idea forward, don't worry, we can work around it.
You have said the opportunities for music creators. Do you have in your mind what something more specific, or?
No, we've used that term for a reason, in that it's broad. Music creators, people that create music in whatever form that may be. I think that's kind of one of the positive bits of the process for us. That we're meeting people from all sorts of.
Is that something that's come over from PRS? Because sometimes at the performative level, the people who perform music, are they still creators, or are they executors?
I'd say
for you, and
if someone else is writing it and you're just performing it, we consider you to team up as the creators. I'd say. I think it didn't come from PRS. That was our term that we used during the pilot last year. But yeah, I think.
Thank you.
What kind of facilities might be available in terms of like computers, projectors, staging, that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. So we have a little project budget that will be allocated to whoever is successful. So it's a £15,000. Sorry, it's not. It's £1,500. 1,500 commission fee, and then £1,000 project budget. You are welcome to put some of your kind of fee money into the production budget if you choose. You don't have to. A couple of people last year did that because it was more kind of tech heavy, and that was just that they wanted to show more tech in the work in progress. But we encourage that it doesn't have to be fully technical in your work in progress showing. It can be you talking about it. It can be a bit of a film. As an example, it can be a digitized version. We're not particularly digitally kind of minded, I guess, if that's the right term. We want to work more digitally, but we're not specialty. It's not a specialty. We would be able to be in touch with people that are that can help out. I'd just say, I guess, just for the work in progress, we'd have to be slightly limited, but only at that stage.
And then if after the work in progress there was is that then you would decide whether there'd be a continuation to carry on funding the work to full?
Yeah, so if we feel like this is something we want to take forward, we will have that conversation.
Could I just say to any artists, composers who might apply either successful or unsuccessful, it might be a good time to also approach Arts Council. If you've been writing this project in your mind and you've got to that bid stage, it might be a good time as well. If it doesn't work because there's not enough for everyone, Arts Council is still always a good time to come and get that money as well.
Sorry, how many hours of work did the last projects take?
Oh, that's a good question. It kind of varied. I'd say
dependent on when the composer was more engaged with it. Obviously, there are times when we had a few weeks when the composer was appeared to just have their head in it. We weren't that involved, and then probably the 6 weeks leading up to the showing, much more heavily involved with the festival. Just so you know, we have our winter festival in December, so it means that in kind of November and beginning of December we are pretty much focused on that. So we will kind of talk you through that in the interview process. That will be less focus from us, and then January, February time we can give you loads of support.
Great. Thank you all very much. And any other questions individually, do call one of us on the way out. Thank you.
Thank you.